So at this point, we have gone through the process of modeling flood exposure, flood risk under a very particular scenario for 2050, assuming 2.4 feet of sea level rise, and modeling where the minor, moderate, and major flood risks will occur. And we did that by identifying areas that are below an elevation that would allow water to flow into them, but only retaining areas that would be hydrologically connected to the coastline in some way so that water could actually conceivably flow there. So what we end up with are three layers, polygon layers that show where that flood could occur. And so the last bit we have here then is to just compose it into a map. So what we have are three separate layers. So just to give a clue what we're seeing, so this is the major flood, which would be reach quite a significant area of Boston. And so that one we can make it somewhat transparent to see a little better. So if I click on that um, that layer and then click on feature layer at the top, you'll see there's a transparency option as one of your options. So I can turn that transparency up to say like 30 some percent, so we can start to see underneath it. Maybe 40% probably work, yeah. So I can see the labeling underneath that. And you can see it reaches quite extensively. The moderate flooding, we have a slightly brighter blue here, but we'll also change its transparency. So you need to click on the layer to make sure you're selecting the proper one. So we'll make that also about 40% transparent. Yep. And then lastly, the minor flood is a dark blue to just show the areas that are, very likely going to flood very regularly, but we'll also make that semi-transparent. Okay. So they're kind of on top of each other, so it's going to be a little dark in some places. That's okay. We might want to zoom in just a tad bit to see a little more detail here. So we can see that, it's interesting where this happens. In some places we can see, like along with the park, it just needs a point of entry, right? Most of it is, like the Moakley Park is blocked by a relatively high point of elevation along the coastline, but there are points that it could be breached, at least the way it was at the time this imagery was captured, right? Hopefully the berms that are being put in place will prevent that possibility, or at least reduce its chances of happening. So what we're going to do then is we're going to just turn this finally into a map. So when you're working in ArcMap, the map you see right here is kind of the default place where you do your analysis and do your number crunching and produce things. But when you want to actually produce something you're going to print or produce a static image from, the way you do that is you go to the Insert menu and you choose Insert and then New Layout. And you pick what your end product will be. So I assume that we're going to work with a letter sized, something you'd normally print. And so that'll insert a blank map. And this is actually what the page would look like. So once we're in the layout, we'll go under the map frame up here and choose the map that we're working from and add that. So you draw a rectangle to basically lay down where you want that map to go. And so it brings in what you've produced in that previous map. And you'll see it adds some labeling down here just because we're using the default base map data, so they're all that copyright stuff. And what we'll want to add to this to make it clearer is at least a legend, and possibly also, if you wanted to, you could certainly add a title. All right, so what we're going to add is we're going to add the legend. Sorry, I'm fighting with buttons on my recording software. There we go. Okay, so we're going to add a legend, and we're going to add a legend, and I'm going to draw a little rectangle in the water area where it won't be too intrusive. So the legend, we want the legend to make sense. So what we can do is, in the left-hand side, we can rename the layers. So the first one, I'll click on it twice, and I'll say minor flood. And what matters here is or at least what I'm highlighting here, is the probability of this flooding. So this is the one that has a very high probability of happening under this scenario, right? So it has an 81% chance of happening. The middle one is a moderate flood. Oops. And this one has, what was it? Oh, shoot, I forgot. 8.6% chance, and then 3.4. Okay, sorry. So 8.6% chance, and then the major flood is 3.4% chance. And you'll see that as I enter these, they're being updated automatically in the legend. So what we're emphasizing here again is we're assuming the water rises at a constant rate, matching what those floods look like in the past. But what the point is to show where the risk is highest. I can do one more tweak here. I'll go to the properties with legend, and I'll change the legend to say flood risk 2050. SLR 2.4 feet. Yep. So then it makes clear like what our assumption is under that scenario. And so at that point, your map is composed. And if you want to produce that, print it out, you can print it out. Or if you want to save it as an image, you can go to the share option, and you can either capture the clipboard, so you can paste it into a Word or PowerPoint document, or you can export it as a JPEG image or even a PDF, depending on how you wanted to use it. So again, that's basically it. So we're producing these maps, and we're gonna the goal is to produce one for each of the scenarios, including the present day, and to show how that changes over time. And so if you have any questions, please contact me.